Test. Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Freddie here. Thanks for tuning in again. This is probably the most requested video, I guess. I mean, like, as far as ideas for posting up on YouTube. People want to know kind of how I chop samples, and this is pretty much what the video is all about. Just to give a little backstory, I learned how to chop samples on a computer first. So I used to use a program called Sony Acid Pro, and I basically just used my mouse and keyboard to chop samples. I didn't own any kind of MIDI controller or keyboard back in the day. Um, Actually, those things didn't really exist. Like MIDI pads didn't exist really. The only thing close to a MIDI pad was taking your MPC and taking the MIDI outs and then putting it through your computer. That was probably like the closest way to do it. But I mean, yeah, there were MIDI keyboards. Anyway, yeah, this is kind of like the first way I learned how to do it. Um, and then I got, an MPC after that, and I learned how to chop samples on that, and then so on and so forth. And now I'm using Ableton. I've been using it for a pretty long time now. But by no means does that make me an expert on Ableton. This is just kind of like how I learned and how I continually do my chopping. So yeah, I'm very much in the box now, for the most part, as far as like sampling and everything like that. Also, we're mainly focusing on Ableton because it's the program that I use. Um, but this way of chopping can also apply to maybe a few other programs. I'm not too sure. Maybe Pro Tools, maybe Logic. I'm unfamiliar with Fruity Loops, so um, I don't know if it'll apply. And I'm not too sure about Reason or like Sonar or Cubase. It might work for like Sonar and Cubase and maybe Digital Performer, but we'll see. But yeah, this is kind of like the keyboard and mouse way of chopping samples, or how I do it, or used to do it. But yeah, hopefully this can kind of apply to what you already know. If you're new to chopping, this might help you out a lot. If you're kind of old to chopping, this might not help you at all. So just take what you can from this and maybe apply it to your own workflow. But here, I'll just play out the sample first. We have a sample here in live. We're using arrangement mode for this. I feel like this way is the best way to kind of explain it in arrangement mode. Most of the stuff that I'll be explaining will be in arrangement mode, other than maybe the last part of like maybe chopping of using Ableton Push. But here, this is the keyboard and mouse way, so I believe anybody can kind of use this way. So here's the sample. Let me play it out. But yeah, that was a sample. Let's just kind of slice it down a little bit. It's basically just like a little loop, 4 to 8 bar loop of pianos. But as you can see here on the screen here, let's go ahead and just zoom in a little bit more. Let's take this back a little bit. So we're going to kind of chop this into 8 parts. And as you can see where the lines or the grids are, it's pretty much already like set out where you can chop this. I actually, as far as like time stretching and everything, I don't really do that too much in live. The warp feature, I don't really utilize it too much. But I'll just show you kind of how I do it for this. So here we are. It's not sliced yet, but those are pretty much the 8 parts that we're going to use. You can use 4 parts, you can use 8, you can use 16, whatever kind of helps you do this, pretty much. But for the sake of this video, we're going to slice this into 8 parts. So we're going to use the shortcut key here, which is Command E. And we're going to go to the first part, and as you can see, it chopped it right there. So there's one part, and we're just going to go down the line and chop it into those 8 grid points. So here we have 8 slices, basically. And So the tempo and everything's still the same. We just sliced it at different points of the sample. So what we can do here now, since we have 8 parts, is we can kind of rearrange this the way we want to. Just memorizing that that's the end and whatnot. So it's basically these 4 parts, and they just kind of get looped up. Those are the same 4 parts. So just to make this a little bit easier, we're going to add an audio track, and we're just going to move some stuff down, maybe so it kind of looks like this, make it a little bit easier. So yeah, then we're just gonna play around with it and see where we want certain things. Say like we wanted this here, and we wanted this here, and maybe this over here, maybe this over here, and so on and so forth. This probably doesn't sound good, but I'm just kind of showing you an idea of what you can do. So it's a little bit of a different variation to it. So that's like kind of like a simple way of like kind of doing everything. I'm just gonna hit Command Z and just undo everything pretty much. And we'll go back to kind of square one here, including those chops. So say you like the loop, basically. What you can actually do here is just slice it again at those 8 points. And you can actually select all of the slices, and if you come down here into this section, you can mess with the transposing of the sample. So it'll basically stretch out the sample at these chop points, but it won't stretch out the entire loop. It'll just stretch out these chops basically. So it'll stretch this out until it ends right here, and it'll stretch this one out. This is the start and stop. So if you select all of them, it's probably easier if we do that. And then you come down here and you transpose it. If you can look at the screen, you can see that the waveform is kind of moving longer and shorter there. And I usually do this longer. So this kind of helps put a different swing to the loop itself. So let's say we want this at like -3. And then we'll play it out. So essentially it's like the same loop, but it's kind of swinging a little differently. And since you transpose it down a little bit more, it kind of takes on a different tone. Of course, it's kind of like a little bit of what we don't want. But yeah, you can do it to the extremity of like putting this all the way down to like a full octave. Yeah, which can kind of sound cool if you put the right effects on it. Or you can put it pretty high. Of course, it's going to cut off. The sound's going to cut off at those points, but... yeah, so if we put this down back to 0, and we're going to hit Command 1, or is it 1? Command 1. See, we created some more grid points. So we can actually chop this in between these slices here. And do the same thing, just select it all. And now we have 16 slices, but the start and stop points are a little bit differently. They're basically halves of what those slices were. And say we do -, 4 down here. yeah, let's go ahead and hear it with just like a drum loop, just so you can kind of see the difference a little bit. So here's like just like a simple drum loop here. I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. Ooh, let's bring down a little bit more. So let's hear it at what it was, the regular tempo. And let's start bringing it down. All right, so yeah, that's kind of like chopping it and giving it a little bit of a swing without warping the track, like without kind of, like if I can explain, like warping, like kind of time stretching it. Because I feel sometimes when you warp or time stretch a sample, it kind of degrades the audio a little bit more. So it kind of sounds weird if you can really listen to it closely. So sometimes I don't warp or time stretch. But let's go ahead and do it by just warping it, so you can kind of see a difference here. Let me duplicate this track actually, and we'll mute it. So let's go ahead and put this to 0 again. So here is the original sample. So we're gonna go ahead and warp this. It already warped it at 92. So when it's warped, now you can adjust the tempo of the track. Say you wanted it like way faster. But if you can listen really closely to the sample, you can kind of see like the digital kind of weird distortion that it has when you kind of warp it from its original tempo. I don't know if you can hear that, but usually if that happens, I'll come down here and I'll put this at complex, and it kind of smooths it out a little bit. But like with it warped, now you can adjust the tempo to what you need it at. But yeah, I mean, that's a good tool if you want to constantly change the tempo. Now going back to the slices without warping the track, let's go ahead. Let me just kind of copy and paste this real quick. Just remember to select all of them when you're adjusting this. And now we can kind of rearrange certain parts here as well. Maybe I shouldn't do it that way. Maybe I should just duplicate it and then just take this part out. And we can even duplicate certain samples here. So say we wanted to duplicate like pretty much all of these samples. So they'll just basically repeat themselves. Let's mute this one. So you can do something like that. Let's just undo all that. You can actually take the ends and put them in the beginning. So let's take another audio track, and let me just cut that, and then we'll put this to the beginning, and we'll just kind of do this. So the end is the beginning, and the beginning is the end. You know, of course, this is a little bit more time consuming because we're not using a MIDI controller. We're just kind of using our keyboard and mouse. But, you know, this is for people who don't have MIDI controllers, is basically what I'm trying to show you. So let's hear the original as a compared to that. So here's the original. Just pitch it down one semitone. And this is the new chop from the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end kind of thing. So I kind of like this. Say if we take this one and put it here and then put this back over here. So here's the original again. And here is the new version. But yeah, you know, like it's a cool little like take on just chopping a sample. You know, like the loop itself, the original loop itself sounds pretty cool, you know, like just by itself. But if you kind of rearrange it a little bit, like how we did right here, actually, if you can see this, it starts on the actual start is like right here. I don't know if you can see that or if you heard it. So we had to just kind of like move all like the samples over just so they kind of line up with the actual loop. But yeah, you know, it's, like I said, it's just like a kind of like a cool way to, I guess, chop like a loop. Just kind of rearranging the slices just like a little bit, like not too much, where it just sounds crazy. This is kind of like a more subtle way of like chopping samples and kind of rearranging it so it still kind of makes sense, like melodically and maybe sonically, it kind of still makes sense. But then, you know, you're not really doing too much to the sample. Like you're just kind of making a new loop out of different slices pretty much. I mean, you can repeat all this stuff. You can even go in and see like the new grid, and you can slice these even more. So if you slice those existing samples and kind of rearrange all these weird kind of things here in weird ways, you can kind of create something. See, just like a bunch of weird stuff you can do. So I mean, there's no limit to how many slices you can actually make in here. I mean, you can even go in and kind of micro chop, see how like the grid changed. I'm just pressing Command 1 and Command 2 so you can kind of see. And you can really do some crazy chops if you want to do that, but just for the sake of this video. But yeah, that's just kind of like how I learned how to chop stuff in the beginning when I first started kind of making beats, just with a mouse and keyboard. This will just be part 1 of this chopping series. That was just kind of like a quick look of how I do stuff. Like I said, I'm no expert at this. This kind of just gives you a little bit of an idea of maybe some stuff you can utilize within your own production. And this is mainly geared towards people who maybe don't have a MIDI controller or like a keyboard or like kind of like a MIDI pad or machine or anything to kind of play with. They only have their keyboard and mouse, and they're really good at like slicing and editing. If you're pretty fast at that, then that might be this might be like something to consider as far as chopping. But yeah, this is just be part 1. In the next part, I'll go into actually using MIDI controllers and how I slice that way, and I think that'll pertain to more people viewing, because I think for the most part everybody now has like a small simple MIDI controller, whether it's a keyboard or like some pads or something like that. But yeah, part 1 done. Part 2 next.